The truth is out there, but so are lies.
Let's start with today and this week in
Oh man, dude,
Redacted.
I was talking about this a couple days ago with my girl, my coworkers, and I, I work with a lot of what is it, Zoomers, and I was asking, I was like, hey, do you guys know the Fruit of the Loom? And I was like, describe the logo to me. And I had never talked about the Mandela effect with them, and they
Oh
explained.
boy.
They all said the same thing that you remember and I remember, right? So the Mandela effect is, I'm going to say, a belief because it's not proven, right? It's a belief that a memory is really hard coded in us that we all remember. Perfect example would be like the Bernstein Bears, the Bernstein Bears. There's a large group of people that remember it as the Bernstein and not Bernstein, right? Or do I have it the other way around? So I guess the spelling shows it that it's like IEN instead of like AIN or something like that.
Hmm.
And there's a large group of people that believe that they changed something, right? Like we jump timelines, and it goes in very amount of directions, right? And why it's called the Mandela effect because of Nelson Mandela, right? There's a large population of people that believe that he died in prison and that he never won the election in South Africa. Then there's another belief that he actually died sometime in 2005. And dude, I am one of those people that remember that.
What? I
So,
didn't know there was a recent one.
yeah, like,
Wow, this poor guy.
and so it got termed as the Mandela effect, the Nelson Mandela
Yeah.
effect, where people started saying, like, he died in prison. And there's a strong portion of people that believe that Nelson Mandela died in as a prisoner of war. And he never came out, never won the presidency, never became he's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Like he never that, and that he didn't die in 2005. That he died in 2012, I think. And I'm like, wait a minute, how many times has this man died? So they're saying that every single time that something changes, like in the Matrix, something like that, we jump timelines is what they're saying, or there's something happened that our course of time is no longer in the same timeline. We're not in the same timeline as the whole like one of the conspiracy theories about it. I don't know.
Okay.
That's just my
And
take on it.
so what we're looking at right now is a so here's where things get interesting with the Mandela effect, which is why I love it, is the the chase for proof, right? You have people all over that hear a Mandela effect, and the first thing they're like is, "That's exactly how I remember it. I remember it being in this way, and I'm gonna go find proof at like an old garage sale, or I'm going to pull up some records somewhere." And what we're looking at right now is a Reddit post related to the Fruit of the Loom logo, which, if I remember correctly, I remember it as being in a cornucopia, having all these like fruits, vegetables inside of a cornucopia, and that being the logo for Fruit of the Loom.
Absolutely, cornucopia, 100%. I remember it in my underwear shirt,
Yeah.
like it was in there as a kid
Now,
and growing up. I remember this.
okay, so I actually don't know because I don't remember. Is the cornucopia the one that's the Mandela effect, or is that the one that's not the Mandela effect
So the Mandela effect is we all remember it
with the cornucopia?
with the cornucopia. The
God
actual logo
damn.
does not have it.
Okay, well,
And
this guy's
now
got a this is what, 90s t-shirt. Is that
Now
what we're
here's the
looking at?
thing: there's that right now there is a giant influx of them popping up right now. Like if you go to the conspiracy, go to top, do this week, and you'll see a lot of them pop up right now. And for whatever reason, every time I talk about the Mandela effect with anybody and I tell them about this one, this is the one that blows their mind more than anything. So this might be a recent one, like a recent jump, tinfoil hat time, like a recent jump in timelines.
Well, here's a guy who's got a picture of Fruit of the Loom. I don't. Let's take a look at this. So people are discrediting this because the old shirts had tags, and this is printed on the shirt.
True.
This is where it gets very challenging. Is trying to make heads or tails of any of this because they're just like with ghosts and aliens, you have bad actors that just want to fucking get their moment of clout on the conspiracy subreddit.
Dude, but there's so many people that like remember it with it.
I
My girl said,
absolutely
my
remember
girl
it
says like,
with
oh,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, okay, let's pause for a second. What do you think about the Mandela effect? I know we've talked about it before, but
oh
like, let me know what your
okay,
thoughts are.
tinfoil hat time. Like absolute tinfoil hat. I absolutely believe that something is happening that either we are contributing to changing it, and that's a whole nother theory on it, like that they're messing with the Hadron Collider, and because they're messing with the Hadron Collider, it's causing us to change timelines. That's one of the theories. I don't know if I believe that, but I do believe that we are somehow jumping timelines because there's so many people, there's so many things like the Jiffy not being Jiffy, it's Jiff. Mandela dying in prison. Um, Luke,
I am
your
your
father.
father. It's mind-boggling to me that this actually is something I believe. Okay,
I
it's
absolutely
it's
believe it,
possible.
100%. Now the magnitude of like how strong it is and like what it's is. Are we jumping timelines? I don't know. I would love to think that.
Well, that's the hard part with the Mandela effect is if you subscribe to it, there's a lot of stuff behind it. Implied beliefs about like the way time works. And these are things that are theoretical. These are things that, science will prove or disprove at some point, right? And here's the piece with the Mandela effect that you just can't ignore. I can't even remember what I had for fucking breakfast last week correctly.
Right?
So
It's like I
human
can't remember
memory.
that. Like, how am I going to remember that it was,
Yeah. Well, what if, we grew up in the same area, right? Relatively, Southern California, around relatively the same time. What if
Mhm.
there was just a brand of like rip off Fruit of the Loom merchandise that went through Southern California in the 80s to 90s, and we just happened to get some shirts that had
knockoff
the,
versions of it?
the knockoff version that had a cornucopia because they didn't know any better.
It could be. Like it was like made by like some Chinese company. We're like, yeah,
Like we
this
need to
looks
add a
right.
cornucopia here because Native Americans and
This looks American to me. It's fun. It's like look, I'm gonna tell you a stupid story. So a few years uh, in an old previous relationship, um, I went to downtown LA with their family, right? And we went clothes shopping in the alleys. I don't know if you are familiar with downtown LA alleys.
oh, I know downtown LA alleys. I don't like what specific one you're talking about.
All right, so it's right there by San Pedro, right? Like where you go
Okay.
by, like it's just like these bunch of shops, right? And it's just counterfeit central, like if
Yeah.
you don't know, right? So we go because the sister wanted to buy clothes, and she only had a certain budget. So we're like, well, let's just go to the alleys. So the mom took her to the alleys, and we went, and she bought a bunch of clothes. And when we get home, she was looking at her Nike shirt, she's looking at her Adidas shirt, she's looking at everything, and she's like trying it on to see if it fits. And I stop, and I'm like, Adidas. And she's like, yeah, what's wrong with it? I was like, it's spelled wrong. And she's like, no, it's not. And I was like, yeah, it is. And I was like, look at your shoes and look at your shirt. And it was Adidas. And she looks at the Nike stuff, and the logo was just like wrong. Like it was just wrong. And her clothes was like crooked. And I remember making fun of her, going like, yeah, you just gotta wear your clothes like this and it'll be straight. So where I'm going with the story is yes, Like they can
Mm-hmm.
make knockoffs, they can make clothes, and it can be bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're experiencing with maybe some of this stuff. Like we're
Oh, I'm sure.
misremembering, and
Yeah.
that's one of the psychological terms that they have for the Nelson Mandela is we are misremembering this. Like it's a
Mhm.
mass misremembering, right? Because it's just like the power of suggestion is so powerful that all of us are going, yeah, I remember that, but as you said, I don't remember what I ate a week ago. Like I couldn't tell you.
You know what I do remember though is I do distinctly remember being a teenager in Hollywood Video in Southern California in Rosemead, okay? Walking through and looking at all kinds of like knockoff big name movies because back in those days you'd have like Transformers would be like the big movie out, and then Transmorphers, which is like a small budget knockoff, would be like, right by it or whatever. I distinctly remember walking through the video store and seeing a promo play for Shazam with Sinbad. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care if Sinbad comes out and says it again and again and again that he was not in this genie movie. I distinctly remember seeing his face on a screen because they used to have these big CRT
Mm-hmm.
televisions hanging from the ceilings of these places to show the promos. I distinctly remember that and thinking, I am not going to rent that.
You just thought it was bad. Like you knew it was bad.
I was not interested in it at all. That's why it stuck out
Okay,
as like a
so
core memory.
my best friend Andy, right? I think you know him as Scheme or Killer.
Yeah.
The very first time I introduced him to the Nelson Mandela effect was the Shazam movie. And I asked him, hey, do you remember this movie with Sinbad where he played a genie? And he described the movie. He's like, yeah, it was a movie. He's like, it was like a weird knockoff of the Shaq movie. He's like, he was wearing this purple top with gold. He's like, I'll never forget it. He's because it was fucking horrible, is what he said.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
And
remember
I'll tell,
thinking that too, by the way.
yeah. And he was like, yeah, he's like, it's terrible. It's a terrible movie. Like, I would never recommend anybody to watch it. He's like, it's absolutely trash. And then I remember telling him like, what if I told you it never existed? He's like, no, it can't be. He's like, I've seen it. Like I've seen it. I rented it. Same exact same thing. He's like, I've seen it with my own eyes. Like, you're wrong. And then I show him everything about it. He's like, that's not real. He's like, they changed something in the Matrix. And I didn't even tell him a single thing about the Nelson Mandela effect. He knew nothing of it. We just this is what it is. And then I started showing him everything. And then he was like, half of it was like, no, this isn't. They did something. They changed something. Like this isn't right.
Fuck, dude, it's so weird because it's like, look, as the resident skeptic here, right? The the thing that I want to say is it on paper, this is just me misremembering this event. It could have been some other genie or some other promo or something, and then I just attributed Sinbad to it, and it just stuck in the back of my head. Hearing that Andy basically saw that, and I actually didn't know that
He had,
story.
yeah, it's like how you explained it. You're like, I remember I would go to the video store, I would see it, and he's like, God, that's an awful movie. And he would say, he would think to himself, that's an awful movie
I'm
without
telling you right now,
knowing.
that's the same thought I had in the promos, and it was part of a Hollywood Video promo. Like they used to run these promos that were basically, welcome to
I
Hollywood Video.
yeah, yeah. I used to work at a video store, and I think the video company was called Ingram, and
Okay,
Ingram would send you these DVDs, and it was what was coming up and coming, right? And they would
yeah,
play it on there, and it would be like a reel of like the 20 movies that were coming up in the next like 2 or 3 weeks, right? Or they movies that they wanted you to keep watching or keep renting, and that's what it was. And he
dude,
said the
that's
same thing like you.
wild.
He's like, I would see this. He's like, I knew exactly. I would see the previews for it. He's like, it looked awful. And for
That's
him to
so
just be like,
wild.
that's not, I don't believe it. Like, you can't be real. Like, that's not real. Like, and then I told him about the whole Star Wars thing, um, Monopoly. The how he doesn't have the monocle.
He definitely has a monocle. I've draw him with a fucking monocle.
He doesn't have
I'm
it.
not even joking. In my work Slack, for every place I've worked, whenever I'm doing something that involves a fanciness,
So okay, so
I
what are
put a
we
monocle
confusing
on
it
top
for?
hat.
Like, look up the logo. Like, where did that come from? Is
Dude,
there
I don't
so
know.
there's a breakdown saying that we're remembering that because in Ace Ventura he gets that guy slaps him, and he's got a monocle,
It's
and he
such a
tells
great
him
movie.
he's like he's the guy from Monopoly, and that we have colliding memories is how someone was explaining how we all remember that because it's a reference
Okay.
in another movie, and he calls him the Monopoly guy, and he's got a monocle, which is another crazy reference. That why did they use that as the the Monopoly guy with the monocle, and we're misremembering from another movie that they also remembered that he had a monocle.
Look, that kind of stuff can happen. Like one person just gets it wrong and telephones out something that permeates into the culture. That's actually kind of cool. And I think you could track that back. You could trace it back to the start, right? And that throws out the whole multiverse, Hydron Collider, multiple timelines aspect, and it also throws out your faulty memory being the core problem here. It was just like a game of telephone that went through, and I'm sure there's probably going to be a lot of those if you start to dig through some of these Mandela effects. That's
Bro, the
also what just
crazy
makes it
that I
interesting.
have to say, the Luke, I am your father, for me is a crazy one. I think it's really downplayed.
The line is, Luke, I am your father.
The line that you remember that you just said is
Uh-huh.
is not that. He's like, no, you killed my father. He says, he's like, search your feelings. He says, I am your father. He never says, Luke, I'm your father.
I'm about to watch Empire, by the way, because I've been going through the Star Wars stuff. I know we were talking about this on the side. So I will pay extra attention to that scene. I just finished A New Hope. I got the 4K original
Yeah, you're gonna
fan
watch it. You
edits.
made me. I'll be like, God damn you, Ryan. I'm gonna go back and watch all of them again. One, two, three, four,
Oh,
five, six in order.
they're pretty good. I'm actually gonna watch the Clone Wars too. I've been looking into the lore of
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars, and there's two ways you can go with Star Wars that I think makes sense. The first way is that Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill exchange when they're filming A New Hope.
Right after we got out of the trash compactor. We hadn't filmed that scene yet. And I'm looking in continuity and I said, well, wait a second. This is right after we got out of the trash compactor. Shouldn't my hair be all wet and matted with schmutz all through it? And he turns to me and says, hey, kid, it ain't that kind of movie. If people are looking at your hair, we're all in big trouble.
It's a viable way to enjoy Star Wars. Like you don't have to care about continuity, you don't have to care about like anything deeper or
Mm-hmm.
meaningful. It's just an interesting story. Or you can go the Star Wars theory route, which is everything has to be very intricate and connected and consistent. Um,
Dude, the one that gets me because I have my nephews and nieces are all that age range, and I used to babysit them. Is the Pikachu with no black stripe at the tail?
oh, there's definitely black on the tail.
It doesn't.
100%.
It's not.
Shut up.
It's not. That's a
How
Nelson
dare
Mandela
you?
effect. I remember with my
What's on the
nephew
card?
Bo.
What's on the card though? That's maybe there's like a misprint or something. Pokemon card.
Yeah,
Pikachu?
apparently he doesn't have the lightning stripe on it.
That's bullshit, dude.
Yeah, that's the one that I was like, when I read that one, I'm like, no, there's no way. I remember watching this stupid show with my nephew Bo, sitting down there going like, yeah, Pikachu's got a black stripe on it. A lightning stripe. Doesn't exist. I was like,
That's
there's no way.
stuff. Yeah, so my take on the Mandela effect is I do believe that there's something very interesting there. Are they all going to be unexplainable or Hadron Collider based? Absolutely not. There's going to be a lot of different ways that you can explain these really interesting sort of. They're very cultural too. Have you noticed that? It's like Fruit
Well,
of the
here's
Loom.
well, funny that you mentioned that. The one of the most cultural men is. Do you remember the Tiananmen Square incident?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so how much of that do you remember? Okay, so you know the infamous tank scene, right? Where the guy's
Uh huh.
stopping it, where he's like stopping the tank and the tank is moving. Oh, this is the famous thing where they're all talking about, you see the guy?
Yeah.
What do you remember about this? Do you ever remember?
I remember he takes a lightsaber out, slices the top, and puts a thermal grenade in. Is that it?
No, man. So the world remembers him getting run over. That's the Nelson
I
Mandela effect.
I don't remember. Um,
I wasn't. I don't know what year this happened. I don't think I was old enough to remember, or I don't remember it. But
89.
the world remembers him getting run over by the tank, that he never got carried off by two people. And I now 25% chance of me saying I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, man, that's where things get really dicey for me is I can understand something like a misspelling,
Oh man.
right? But when someone's alive or dead, that's a big difference, you know?
Here's a big difference one, right? And Ryan,
Yeah,
Ryan,
Chris.
I'm going to say with 100% certainty that C3PO's leg was gold. He was always gold. It was never silver.
I don't remember him being silver like at all.
He's got a silver leg. While
No,
you're
I know.
watching
I
it,
just I just watched the New Hope, yeah.
it was never silver. Never.
See, that one could be
Watching Return of
color
the Jedi
grading.
as a kid and Empire Strikes Back, gold. All gold. When I found that out, I went to go watch it right away. And the minute I saw it, I was like, they changed something in the Matrix. They changed something. We're in a different timeline. This can't be. That was my oh shit. They changed something because I remember it with all my like person, with all like my memory, with everything that his whole entire body was gold. And the internet could sit there and fight me and complain saying like no, it's when he got destroyed. After he got destroyed they rebuilt him and he was then all gold.
Yeah, I look, I think there's probably a lot of mysteries about life and our own experience of how we experience things that are just not understood very well. I don't think we even need to go to like there's multiple timelines or Hadron Collider or anything related to like sci-fi to just be like, who knows how any of this stuff works. We have a good intuition of what Monday looks like going to Tuesday and
At
Tuesday
least as
to
far as we
Wednesday.
know, right?
Yeah, as far as we know, we have a pretty good idea of how that works. But quite frankly, man, the world is so strange. I mean, I'm trying to remember. Did I share the physics story with you with the bombs being dropped out in World War I think 2 or World War 1? I don't remember which
The
it
carpet
was.
bombing, the fire.
Well, it was how they were training. Like a physics professor told me this story, or told all the whole class this story.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the intuition is when you're flying and you're going to be bombing someone, is to drop the bombs when you're overhead. You know, your target is overhead, drop the bombs. That's not how physics works, though. Like that bomb that's in the plane with you is moving at the same rate that you are. You have to drop that thing before you are over the target. If you drop it while you're over the target, you're going to miss because it's going like this and then, sloping down because it's leaving the plane at a speed. It's not going to drop straight down.
Yeah, we did talk about
Yeah, so they have to train people against their intuition. And I guarantee you everyone's intuition or most people's intuitions will be wrong and they'll just assume just drop it over your target. So, when we're looking at the way that we experience time and events and our own personal histories and the world histories, we have an intuition on how Monday to Tuesday looks, how Tuesday to Wednesday looks, right? It doesn't mean it's not wrong or there's some kind of like unintuitive thing there that like throws a wrench in everything. And that's why the Mandela effect gets me excited because it points to that, right? Like whatever the mechanism is for that, could be faulty memory, it could be telephone games, could be weird cultural stuff, or maybe it is some like sci-fi stuff, or maybe the way that we experience things is just not accurate to how the world is. Big surprise, you know. So I have it's kind of a cherished place in my heart where I get excited when I think about the possibilities with that. Maybe it is alternate
yeah.
timelines. Who knows?
I don't
Maybe
know.
time doesn't work the way we think it works. Maybe every event happens and we only remember one snapshot of it, but everything still has happened. I don't know how the details of that works, but maybe that's how it is.
Yeah, maybe it could be, but I don't know. There's a lot of things that I can't explain. Like I remember I told you that time that like something odd happened to me where I ran into the same person like four or five times with my girl. Like we were coming back from the mall and like something
Yeah.
weird happened. Dude, I had something happen to me like that maybe like 2 weeks ago again.
Really? What
And
happened?
okay, so I am having a corporate visit and it's wrapping up. They're done, and I'm getting ready to leave. Right, I had been there all day, and I'm like, I'm tired. I'm gonna head out like 30 minutes earlier. So as I am walking out, I look at these two young ladies to my left, and they're getting ready to check out. And I think I tell one of my cashiers, "Hey, can you help them out? Like, I think there's something wrong with their transaction." And she's like, "Yeah, I'll do it right now." So she goes over, and I say bye to her, and I say bye to everybody else. And I see the two girls, and why they stood out to me is their outfits, like what they were wearing, was not your typical outfit. Yeah, I would see someone wear at like Michael's. Like they're just way they're wearing one of them's wearing all white, including white shoes, and wearing a white backpack, and the other's wearing all blue, including blue shoes. Like their outfit, it was just kind of it just stuck out to me. I don't know why. So I get into my car and I start driving down, and I'm driving down maybe like 4 or 5 blocks, and then I see them walking on the right side, and I'm just like, those are the two girls at the and why they stuck out to me is because of the outfits that they were wearing. And I was like, oh, something changed in the Matrix is what I thought. And I was like, there's no way they got there that quickly. Like, there's no way. I was just like, oh, I literally said, oh shit. And it was just an odd. It was like 105 out there. There's no reason they should have been walking.
They kind of
Yeah,
sound like Willy Wonka characters, dressed in all white, all blue. Another one in all blue, like she's gonna blow
yeah,
up
like
in a
she
second.
one of them was wearing like white linen clothing, and the other one was wearing like bluish, grayish, like wool clothing. It
Oof.
didn't look like out of place, but it just didn't look like what fashion everybody else is wearing their age. Now
Yeah.
I'm way out of fashion. My girl says like that too, but to me they looked out of place. Like what they were wearing didn't look normal to me. And yeah, then I saw them jump down the street where I was like, oh, something changed in this timeline. Something changed after that moment. And what was weird also on top of that is my drive home, there was no traffic. And I'm leaving like 4:30 p.m. Los Angeles traffic. There was nothing. So I was like, okay, this is weird. I don't know, I just felt different. It just felt different.
Like I felt like if you want to say it, like I felt like I jumped timelines or something happened is what it felt like. And then
Damn.
okay, then on top of that, I ran into my old bosses, and I honestly felt like they didn't like me before. Like I felt like at the end how like I left, like I felt like out of favor. And when I was engaging with them, it didn't feel like that. And then I ran into them after that an additional two times, like at a Petco, like at another Petco, I ran into them. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, what the hell is it? I don't know if you believe like the whole universe, like what is it trying to tell you?
Yeah, man. Look, if there's all kinds of weird stuff that happens if you think that there's branched paths, which is a more common belief than a lot of people talk about that in their lives. Like, oh, what if I flip the coin this way instead of that way, right? So I think that a lot of people have a fundamental belief somewhere in their heart that there are branched paths, at least at the very least, right?
Yeah.
And then all kinds of weird stuff happens off of that. Like, how do you, what branch are you on? Are you on the right one? How do you change the
What Earth
branch?
are you on, bro? Are you on the sacred
Yeah,
timeline or what, you know?
I know. There's all kinds of weird. That's what I'm talking about. Like with this intuition stuff. Like we live and experience one path. It doesn't mean that there's only one path. It just means that we're experiencing
Oh
whatever our
man.
experience is right now is of one path.
Speaking of like intuition and path and everything and maybe living this and knowing the now. But this one crazy time when I was at Costco, I had this weird encounter of the guy on the wheelchair and the quarters. Did I ever tell you about that?
Guy
Have
in
I
a
ever shared about
wheelchair?
that?
No.
Where okay, so this is when I used to work at Costco. It was the 1 hour photo lab, right? It doesn't exist anymore at Costco. So Costco hot dog.
We'll get that in the background.
So working at Costco, this is probably like 2002, 2003, and it's myself, Susie, and Mike. There's only three of us working, right? And I am working the counter. I believe Susie's developing the film, and Mike is doing the printing. Oh, no, excuse me, it's not Mike, it's Victor, because Victor looked at me very weird after that. I'll never forget that. So we used to have this rotation, right? One person would receive the film and develop it. You would put it, and developing was like literally just put it in a machine, put tape on it, put it on the rolls, and feed it, and have the machine, do its job and develop it. And then the next person would cut the negatives and then print them, and then the person that was working the register would then take the pictures, bag them, and then help the customers on the register. And we would take an hour turn on it, so that way we didn't feel like we were just doing the same thing over and over again. So it's like maybe a random Tuesday. It's not busy, and this guy like rolls in a wheelchair, and I see him, and I'm like deja vu, like hard, right, and like super hard. And for whatever reason, he comes up to me, and I knew his name. I knew his first name. It was Jose. Can't remember his last name for that, but I'm gonna say it was something like Rodriguez, right? It was a typical Latino name. It's like Jose Rodriguez, and he's like, yeah, and he gives me a very weird look, like how I knew his name. But maybe he thought, okay, maybe there isn't that many people that have come in today. Maybe he remembered my name when he took it. I wasn't the one that took it from him. So I go get his pictures, and I was like, we did do um, doubles for you. I know you only did singles, but we did do doubles for you because in my dream, he asked me, hey, is it too late to do doubles? And for whatever reason, I told Victor, do doubles on this one, and he did them. And he gives it to me, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's just looking at me really weird. And he gives me change, and my response before he even asked me, I tell him, yeah, I could give you a roll of quarters. I got like 30 bucks in quarters, and I give him his change. I give him the roll of quarters, and I'm like, have fun doing laundry. Have a good day, man. He's like, how did you know? I was like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. And he just like rolled really quick and like looked at me, turned around, and like just like left. And Victor was like, what was that about? I was like, I don't know. He's like, how'd you know he wanted doubles? Like, how'd you know his name? was like, I don't know. I was like, I think I dreamt this before. And then Susie looked at
Weird.
me. She was like, "You're weird." That was it. It was just
or
a. I.
or that whole series of events was happening an infinite amount of times, and in a couple amount of those times you asked his name and what he was doing because you were having a casual conversation, and it seeped into your brain in this one, in this version. Who knows?
Who knows? I couldn't tell you, but it was just. It was so weird.
Or you just guessed completely just off the rip and it just happened to be right.
I don't think I guessed. There was no way I guessed. There was no way, Ryan. There was no way that I would know that he wanted doubles, that I knew his name, first and last name, that I knew he wanted quarters,
It would be very
and that he
rare.
was in a wheelchair. That I knew this.
It would be very, very unlikely, but dude, stranger shit has happened. Who knows?
Yeah, like it was just so. It was just odd, and I've never had anything like that strong ever again, like ever. I can't explain it.
But here's the thing. Now I want a Costco hot dog.
After working for so many years there, like I can't do it. I heard that they went away. I don't know if this is true. Someone was saying like they got rid of a bunch of the foods there.
Really? That sucks, dude. That was like the saving grace.
But there was something that they got rid of recently.